It's the year 2024, and we have a surprising amount of options regarding free-to-play MMORPGs. As buy-to-play seems to become a less and less common practice, and the shift towards free-to-play monetization strategies seems to be the route that a lot of studios are taking. However, free-to-play can mean many different things, from demos or limited-time trials to free-to-play with massive pay-to-win optionality, or free-to-play with fairly limited pay-to-win optionality. Too often, we see people start playing a game, and as the honeymoon phase of that game starts to really set in, they overlook some glaring issues. Issues that they might end up having a real problem with towards the later part of the game, when progression starts to slow down and the endgame grind begins to set in. So to offset that problem, I decided that today I want to talk about the genuinely best free-to-play MMOs that you should definitely be trying in 2024. But first, I would like to quickly mention that we've started a new community Discord for fans of this channel and fans of MMOs, who are looking to find like-minded MMO players, socialize, hang out, group up, etc. And if you want to chat with me and get notifications for streams and videos, check out the link in the description below. I think we could really grow this Discord into an awesome community place to discuss anything and everything revolving around MMOs. So let's kick things off. Bear in mind, these games are in no particular order. Though, make sure to watch to the end because I'm going to rate my top 2 personal favorite free-to-play MMOs. But first up, we have none other than Star Wars: The Old Republic, a tab-target story-driven MMO that runs on a subscription-based monetization model that gives you access to the entirety of the game. However, you don't need to maintain your subscription to maintain access to the future expansions and areas. Once you buy the subscription once, you have access to that forever. Now, one of the main selling points of Star Wars are the class storylines, of which all 8 of them are completely free to play. That means there's hundreds of hours of really well done, choice-driven, and voice-acted storyline for you to play through. However, I think it's okay to categorize Star Wars as a single-player RPG experience, but it's in a shared world. While playing the game, you might realize that the game doesn't really offer too much incentive to play with others outside of a few niche scenarios. Most of the time, you're just going to be experiencing the world solo. With that being said, Star Wars was one of my favorite recent experiences while playing an MMO, and even as someone who's not really a massive fan of the franchise, that had no bearing on how much fun and enjoyment I got out of the game. Alright, next up, let's take a look at Lost Ark, a Korean-made MMO that's also a top-down ARPG. As with many Eastern-made games, you're going to find a pretty robust monetization system in Lost Ark. It features many different currencies, shops, bonuses, and boosts. However, that's not to downplay the fact that Lost Ark to some people has some of the best combat out of any MMO on the market currently. Lost Ark as a free-to-play experience offers hundreds, potentially thousands of hours of content. And really, where you're gonna find the incentive to actually pay money presents itself in the very end of endgame, in order to stay competitive with some of the other players who are running the newest and most difficult content. With all that being said, you can actually still participate in those endgame activities while you are a free-to-play player. You just might find that you have to play the game about as much as a full-time job. All of that aside, Lost Ark has a really cool, immersive world with some extremely unique classes that will change up your playstyle immensely depending on which one of those you pick. Lost Ark also features a massive horizontal collection system spanning across multiple continents that'll have you sailing and traveling all over the world, doing puzzles, defeating bosses, and interacting with others in order to get that sweet completionism dopamine. And to top it off, if you're interested in actually difficult solo or group content, Lost Ark doesn't shy away from making some genuinely difficult encounters that are gonna have you pushing your limits in terms of PvE skill. I think honestly, Lost Ark has one of the best new player experiences out of many games that I've personally tried. Even now, I still look back on my time spent playing Lost Ark as extremely positive. Now, let's talk about Guild Wars 2. The tab-target hybrid action MMO from ArenaNet, which features a really fair monetization strategy. For a whopping price of $0, you get access to the entire base game of Guild Wars 2, which is absolutely nothing to shake a stick at. It's a massive world where you can level and play through all the way to max level with an immense amount of completionism and exploration content, spanning hundreds of hours of gameplay with a storyline that ranges from sometimes corny to actually pretty good. But where Guild Wars 2 really shines for me is the gameplay. The combat, the movement, everything about Guild Wars 2 feels really good to play. And by all means, you would expect it to be a buy-to-play MMO. The real monetization strategy is through expansions and certain storyline additions to the game, where you'll find massive, important account upgrades such as the access to different types of mounts and gliders, However, it's not subscription based, so once again, once you've purchased these expansions, you'll have them forever. One of the main selling points of Guild Wars 2 is its horizontal progression system that doesn't really allow for old content to become outdated. Basically, every piece of gear that was viable during the game's release is still viable today. And this leads to a world feeling really lively, as you'll constantly be running into other players who are also trying to complete different parts of the map and content, even in the base game zones. And just as a little aside, something that I've noticed when interacting with my viewers is that if someone is looking to play their very first MMO, I think Guild Wars 2 is a great recommendation for someone who's new to the genre. It's basically going to show you all of the different types of playstyles that you might find in an MMO and deliver those in a super digestible way that allows for newer players to the genre to really find their favorite type of content. Okay, moving on to something a little different. We have to talk about old school RuneScape. Now, disclaimer, there are two versions of RuneScape. RuneScape 3, which is the more modern version of the game, is unfortunately going through a rather rough patch at the moment with a declining player base due to a lack of updates and a constant push from the developers for more microtransactional pay-to-win stuff. However, it does feature some really nice storyline and a more fleshed out combat system than the old school version. I personally wouldn't recommend it as one of the best free-to-play MMOs, however, it's certainly a runner-up. But old school RuneScape is definitely worth talking about. A game where every update literally has to be approved by the player base in order for it to pass a poll and make it into the game. OSRS works on a subscription model as well as an in-game item known as bonds that essentially allows you to purchase the subscription for in-game currency. But something to bear in mind is that these items also allow players to essentially purchase in-game currency with IRL money. The subscription to old school is almost essential at a certain point, as without a membership, you're basically missing out on 80% of the game's content. However, the game literally has so much content that the 20% you do have access to as a free-to-play player is still insanely massive. And there are many people who play this game strictly as a free-to-play player, either because they don't want to pay for a membership, or they just want to challenge themselves and see how far that they can actually progress without spending any money. Now, OSRS is exactly what it says it is, old school, so the graphics may be off-putting to a potential new player who is used to or prefers more modern graphics. With that being said, OSRS is a massive game featuring 23 different skill lines that make up a classless system that allows you to work on and do whatever you want. The questing is an extremely unique experience featuring certain quests which can take up to almost an entire day of gaming to finally complete. Furthermore, through the use of a program known as RuneLite, which you can download and use directly through the game's launcher, you'll find many more modern MMO quality of life features that make the older MMO play much more similarly to a modern one. The combat is a unique click and wait system that you might think is overly simple, but through prayers and food and different weapon types and engaging boss encounters, they've really made it into quite a robust and very challenging system. To anyone watching who has potentially never played old school or potentially won't just because you don't like the graphics, I would definitely urge you to at least take an evening, put aside some time, and just try it out. You might be surprised. Now, let's talk about a different kind of MMO. Don't let Albion Online's cartoony graphics put you off. This is genuinely one of the most interesting MMOs currently on the market. Albion is a truly PvP-oriented sandbox game. Now, if PvP is not your cup of tea, there is still plenty to do in Albion, but that's definitely the main focus and the highlight of the game. Featuring a subscription-based monetization strategy that can once again be purchased with in-game currency. However, with Albion, their subscription, known as Premium, doesn't actually lock you out from any of the content in the game. It just allows you to progress faster and receive a little more money and experience than someone who doesn't have Premium. Albion is a classless MMO where you progress by leveling up and progressing the items which you actually wear and use. The combat is simple to understand but difficult to master and offers many different forms of PvP, from no loot to full loot, 1v1, 3v3, 5v5, and open world massive battles between rival factions. You could completely focus on PvP or focus on just gathering and skilling and crafting. Albion's economy is absolutely booming, and if you're the type of player who likes to play with friends, Albion might be one of the best group experiences in terms of free-to-play MMOs. Especially if you guys don't take yourselves too seriously and you don't mind losing some items along the way to becoming and learning how to be a better player. Albion is a game where you can just truly do whatever you want, whenever you like, and it offers a massive amount of player choice, featuring almost no quests and no real objectives. Just get out there and get crafting or doing PvP or doing even some PvE. Now, next up, we have to talk about Neverwinter. Viewers of my channel will know that during my in-depth look at Neverwinter, I didn't necessarily give the game a super glowing review. However, it's important to note that those reviews are just my personal opinion after having spent a substantial amount of time in the game. Unfortunately, I found the monetization system to be a bit aggressive, allowing you to skip multiple hundreds of hours of grinding if you choose to, and the game feels relatively outdated in certain aspects. But that doesn't preclude the fact that Neverwinter is still an exceptionally popular free-to-play MMO, which you can actually play and experience on multiple platforms. It features a relatively decent action combat system that is fast-paced and easy to understand. And probably the biggest selling point is the fact that it takes place in the Dungeons & Dragons universe, even featuring many different prominent and popular characters that you might recognize from Forgotten Realms. Realistically, the entire RPG genre was inspired by D&D. So if you want to step foot in the universe that brought modern fantasy to what it is today, then Neverwinter is definitely a world where you can lose yourself for hundreds of hours, even as a free-to-play player. And next up, we have to talk about Final Fantasy XIV. Widely considered to be one of the best MMOs on the market currently, FF14 features an exceptionally immersive storyline, a true social gameplay experience, also challenging and rewarding endgame group content, as well as a progression system that basically allows you to complete and level up every single class or job on one single character. Final Fantasy does require a subscription, however they also have a free trial option that allows you to play the entirety of the game up to level 70. And this includes the entirety of the storyline up to the Stormblood expansion, meaning you have plenty of content to complete before you're ever asked to spend any money. Considering Final Fantasy XIV's gameplay, storyline, and overall feel, having that much access to so much free content in what is widely considered a top 3 MMO currently is no joke. And to those of you commenting constantly and wondering when my in-depth review of Final Fantasy XIV will be released, well, I guess I can finally let you all off the hook. It's gonna be coming out soon. TM. Anyway, there are so many different, literally hundreds of options in terms of free-to-play MMOs that I couldn't recommend on this list. However, sifting through the bad ones can be quite a laborious task. I wanted to make a list of the best free-to-play MMOs out there currently that I would actually genuinely play myself. Some runner-ups and honorable mentions would have to be Runescape 3, like I mentioned, Lord of the Rings Online, EVE Online, Star Trek Online, and probably so many more that I'm missing. But which ones are the best? Well, unequivocally, without a doubt, I am always 100% correct, so you have to take what I'm about to say as fact, even though it's just my subjective opinion. But I would recommend number 1, Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 is just such a masterclass in terms of horizontal progression and completionism. You can play the game casually or hardcore. You can enjoy the story, you can PvP, you can PvE. The amount of content that you get for free is just out of this world. And as for my second recommendation, that would have to be old school RuneScape. Listen, it's a childhood favorite. What can I say? The game features one of the most unique skilling systems of all time that honestly no one else has managed to pull off or even come close to. OSRS is basically a cultural phenomenon at this point in terms of its following. And the gameplay proves why graphics really are not that important when it comes to the amount of enjoyment that you can get out of a game. Also, the fact that you can pay for your subscription with in-game currency, and it's somewhat reasonable to actually maintain that membership by just playing a reasonable amount. The constant updates and player polling puts it in a really strong position here. Anyway, folks, I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who made it to the end of the video. Don't forget a like, a comment, a subscription. Those things help a bunch. And if you really enjoyed the video, think about becoming a channel member. Also, don't forget, new community Discord, link is once again at the top of the description. But I'll catch you all in the next one. Later.